What if you could speak to a 5 times New York Times best-selling author who is an expert in organizational culture and leadership and is an actual nice guy that was really going to help you to change your organization? What would you ask? Because today we have Chester Elton, okay? 5 times best-selling author on the New York Times, global guru, father of 4, and all-around awesome guy here on the Nights of Transformation. Chester, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Arthur. Thanks for the invite and for the wonderful introduction. I couldn't have done it better.
All right, so Chester, I mean, you are like the culture expert. So what are some of the things that, you also have a new book out. Tell me about your book.
Yeah, thanks. Our new book is The Best Team Wins, the 5 Disciplines of High Performance Teams. And it was a natural progression from us from culture to employee engagement to how do you create those high performance teams. And then, of course, always back to the carrot for us, which is reward and recognition. Never met a great team or culture that didn't celebrate their successes. So it brought it full circle for us.
Perfect. Is that why you're wearing orange?
Always. Got a little brand. The carrots are orange, so I wear orange.
Awesome.
Watch face of my watch.
Yeah. Be true to your brand. All right. So, Chester, tell me a little bit more about what this book's about. What's the gist of the book and why, because this is based on your latest research. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Over 80% of employees work in some kind of team, whether it be virtual or in the same building and so on. And we love the work that Lancioni did on the 5 dysfunctions of a team and the foundations of great teams, having a noble cause, great communication, and so on. What we looked at, and our database was 850,000 engagement surveys, plus another 50,000 motivators assessment, which is our proprietary online assessment, is that, over the last 5, even 7 years, the dynamic of the digital world, the remote world, the gig employee, the rise of the millennial generation is much more mobile, that there were disciplines that we hadn't seen before. And those 5 were really key to those high performance teams. And so looking at our data, we thought this will be a great help for whether you're a teammate or a team leader in really galvanizing your team around what it is you need to get done and be more productive in this modern world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's brilliant. So give me like what would be the starting point here?
Well, we did them in no particular order, but the first one we looked at was being able to manage generations. Never before have we had 5 generations working in the workplace at the same time. So you've got a few traditionalists left, not many. A lot of baby boomers that are starting to fade out. You've got Gen X, you've got the millennials, you've got Gen Z coming in. I mean, this dynamic of how do you communicate to 5 different generations? We drove our parents crazy, and our kids' job is to drive us crazy, right? So, whether it's your music or the way you dress or the way you communicate, and that dynamic, really understanding the key motivators of the different generations and how to communicate on a much more personal level and emotional level became really key. So number one for us was, do you know how to manage generationally? Do you understand the differences? Good leaders kind of get it. The extraordinary leaders take the time to understand it and make the adjustment.
Brilliant. Okay. And so let's say, for example, because that in itself, there's a lot of other elements to that too on an international basis where, you've got, let's say, for example, in the Middle East, you've got this new Gen Z coming in, and they're literally being forced into leadership roles
Right.
because there's a lack of the local people. And so they're trying to push these guys into leadership roles, and it's not really succeeding very well.
No, you're right. The key is you've got to take the time, which leads us right into our second discipline, which is you've got to know how to manage to the one.
Okay. All right.
The old discipline at least is we have a set of rules and they apply to everybody. That's fair. The new discipline really is to say, no, listen, you've got to manage to the one. there's always going to be an exception. You've got part-time employees, you've got gig employees, you've got remote employees, you've got different languages, different cultures, different disciplines. And if you take the time to understand what those key motivators are and who that person is, we say, know their story. Everybody's got a story. If you know that story, you're going to be in a much better position to know how to manage that person. For example, our data shows us that the top 3 motivators at work for the millennial generation is impact, learning, and family. So, not to put everybody in the same bucket, generally speaking, look, if I've got young people working for me to be able to connect the dots as to what they do and the impact it has, not just on our organization, our customers, but our community, the environment, and the world. Those key things, and knowing that person's story. What is it? Social responsibility? Is it making an impact? And I'll tell you what was really interesting: impact, learning, and family. Top 3 motivators. So I'm making a difference. I'm growing and developing. And by the way, I've got a personal life. I've got a life that blends in with my workplace. Those top 2 we found had huge impact on building a great team.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so now we got like 3 more. Now I'm very excited. So we got okay. So you got the many across generations, got catering to the one. What's next?
Well, speed to productivity. With the in the workplace, we took a look and said, look, my dad was a traditionalist. He worked for the same organization for 40 years. That's going to be fairly rare going forward, right? Baby boomers, if you had 5, maybe 6 jobs, that was okay. Gen X, a little more mobile, maybe 7, 8 jobs. Millennials, the projection is 15 jobs. I'm going to move around. I'm going to have life experience. I'm going to be very mobile. And so this idea that I've got a year to get people up to speed is no longer viable. We've got to hire better. We've got to insert them into the culture on our team much faster. I've literally got maybe a month or 2 to make sure that you've got all the tools and understand all the rules and you're up and running. I may only have you for 2 years. So for those 2 years, I need you to be really productive. So this idea of speed to productivity, hiring better cultural fit, making sure I understand what your goals are, so that in 2 years when you leave, it's not a surprise. If you're great, you're welcome to come back. While you were here, you really knocked it out of the park. And we created that culture, that environment where you could get up to speed very quickly and be productive very quickly.
Well, now, you're talking about cultural fit, which is something that I completely advocate and far over competencies. And, so now what would be some of the strategies to really identify good cultural fit?
Well, again, we come back to the fact that, do you understand what people's intrinsic motivators are? Often we look at their CV, we look at their resume, and we say, wow, educational background, experience, perfect fit. That interview becomes really key. Do I have the emotional fit, right? You've seen this more often than I have, probably, where the resume is perfect. The person is not perfect for what you want, right? And so, again, understanding those key emotional connections. What is it that really emotionally will engage you at work? And engaging the team in the hire, which is already a best practice in many places, where you say, look, I'm going to make sure my team interviews so that they can get the story, so they can get the fit. Often as a leader, you're so eager to fill that spot that you may make a hire a little prematurely. Your team, great, a great firewall from hiring the wrong person. So those things become really key. Know their story, their emotional connection, what their key motivators are, and make sure the team got in, because they're the ones that ultimately have to work with the person on a day-to-day basis. And if that fit is right, your odds on getting speed to productivity go way up.
Fantastic. All right. Okay. So number 4, what's the 4th one?
Number four is challenge everything. As you well know, in the digital age we live, the barrier to entry to your competition is very low. It used to be you'd come out with a new product and service, and for 2 or 3 years, you were ahead of the competition. Now it's more like 2 to 3 weeks. So you've got to innovate. We looked at a wonderful study that was done by Google on innovation innovative teams. What were the attributes of the most innovative teams at Google? It was 5 years, the 180 teams study. And it was really interesting, Arthur, that the number one attribute of high performance teams was emotional safety. So in other words, I was free to express myself without being ridiculed. I didn't have to worry about the pecking order. I didn't have to worry if this was going to jeopardize my career. We could just get in a room and solve the problem. And more than anything, I thought that was interesting. Again, it wasn't back to capabilities. It was back to that emotional fit. Do I feel safe at work? In fact, it was interesting. We did a wonderful study of Bell helicopters, how they brought in new designers to work with their engineers. Not engineers working with engineers, but designers like of video games and sci-fi movies. And they had to create an environment where the opinions of everyone mattered. And one of their rules that I thought was fabulous was nobody laughs or ridicules. And that it was really interesting. They said, challenge the idea, not the person.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that created that emotional safety. And then the last one of our 5, of course, is key to everything, is don't forget the customer.
Yeah.
We're doing all this so that we've got loyal and highly engaged customers, and without that, the first 4 don't matter. So are we really focused on what it is our customers need and want? Are we creating that great experience that binds them to us? It's the old adage, would you rather have a satisfied customer or a loyal customer? Clearly, loyal customers are what you're after. And so that really completed those 5 disciplines for us. And we looked at great cultures. We looked at great brands. We looked at very innovative brands. And those 5 things were there every time. Good leaders do it sometimes. Great leaders do it all the time.
Wow. Well, that's brilliant, Chester. Hey, so, show me the book again, just in case if people forgot what it looks like. So show me the book. So you can get this on Amazon. Okay. You can get it at your local bookstore. You can, go to New Jersey and get it directly from Chester.
There you go. Stop by the house. I've got them on my shelf. We were really proud of this book too. It won the International Book Awards from internationalbook.com, and it also won Business Book of the Year. So a multiple award-winning book.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Arthur, I'll tell you what's really interesting, because I know you're an expert in culture and leadership as well, is that when we looked at these great teams and we looked at organizations where all of these things were present, we found a great example of a guy named Chris Hadfield. Does that name ring a bell with you at all, Chris Hadfield?
Chris Hadfield, it does.
So Chris Hadfield was the commander of the International Space Station.
Okay.
And I grew up in Canada, and he's Canadian. So we are very proud of Chris Hadfield. People say, do Canadians have astronauts? I say, yes, we've had 3, all right? So back off. Anyway, Chris was a fast guy where we presented together in Alberta, Canada. And he had this 6-man team up in the International Space Station that had one of the most productive 6 months in the history of NASA. And so, writing our book on teams, we got to talking. I said, so what were the key elements of this team? And he said, well, it was really an interesting team because we had 3 cosmonauts. So we had 3 Russians, 2 Americans, and 1 Canadian. And he said, so culturally, we were very diverse. He said, generationally, we were diverse. From the youngest to the oldest astronaut was 32 years, I think. Wow. So generationally. And I thought, well, what a perfect team to study, right? I said, so what did you do to have such success? And he said, look, there was no question we were really smart and we were ridiculously well trained. Now, they trained for like 10, 12 years before they go up. He said, we did some things that I thought were key. He says, I moved to Russia. I learned how to speak fluent Russian, so there'd be no communication barrier. He said, we talked about each other's families and stories. And we not only prepared, intellectually and physically, what we prepared mentally. One of the things they did I thought was really interesting. They said, what would we do if one of our family were to unexpectedly pass away? How would we handle that? Because you can't go back. You can't just jump in and head home. And in fact, one of the cosmonauts, his father died unexpectedly of a heart attack. So they were emotionally prepared. He said, but of all the things we did, he said, the one thing that made the biggest difference was we had one unwritten rule. And the unwritten rule was this, that every astronaut had to perform one random act of kindness for every other astronaut every day. Isn't that fascinating?
Brilliant.
And he said, it was never a big thing. It was, I'll clean up. Let me help you with the calculations. Let me, fix dinner, whatever it is. He says, because we did that, we never had a heated argument. No one ever lost their temper. He says, we never had hurt feelings because the message was, you're on my team. I'm cheering for you. I got your back. You can count on me. I love you. And he said, it was just about solving the problems. He said, and that probably more than anything created a culture where we could just flourish and we could be productive.
Wow.
And we cared about each other. Isn't that a great story?
That is a great story, Chester. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we always say, look, these principles work on your teams. They work in your culture. They work at work. They also work at home. When you think about your two kids and your lovely wife, those little random acts of kindness, leaving a little note or cleaning up the kitchen or you getting the kids' lunches ready for school or, a simple I love you, a little text. Those are the little things, those random acts of kindness that create great families and great relationships. So, let's not leave it all at work, right? Let's remember to take it home for the team that matters the most to us, right? Our families and our friends.
Well, our families also create a culture. I mean, we have in every group, whether it's our friends, our families, or at work, we are creating cultures or our teams. And we have different cultures in different teams depending on, like you said, the different motivators, the primary motivators, and how the team mix works. So that is, I really am very grateful for all of the insights you've given us, and it's definitely applicable across the board. And thanks again for that story. That's really brilliant.
You got it. Well, it's interesting. I grew up in a ridiculously happy household. I have 4 older brothers. My mom and dad were madly in love. I never heard my father raise his voice to my mom. And one of the things that my dad taught all of us, not only, how to treat your wife respectably and how to raise a great family, is he had a saying that I loved. And he said, the thing I loved about my dad is he treated the homeless people or the parking attendant the same way as captains of industry. To my dad, everybody mattered. And he had a saying, he said, Chess, you be good to everybody. Everybody's having a tough day. And I thought that was such great advice because, we may be having a great day with our friends and families, and then we go to work and people that report to us, we don't know what they came from. We don't know if they're having trouble with a child or got some bad news. And so our job is to make sure that they believe what they do matters, that they've made a difference. We've connected the dots for them. And when they make a difference, we remember to say thank you. And those very simple human elements create great cultures and great relationships that last a lifetime. So of all the stuff we've done, I always go back to my dad and say, thanks, Dad. I mean, that was the best advice a kid could ever get.
Oh, that is brilliant. Well, Chester, thank you so much. Okay, one last thing that you want to say to the people here on the show?
Yeah, just listen, be kind. I think the world needs kind people. And, kindness is good business. It really is. When you're kind to people and they respond and you create happiness, your customers come back. When you create that kind of positive culture, people want to work for you. And as you look around and you see all the bullying online and the crazy discourse we have in a lot of the politics of the day, you know what? Kindness, we just need more of it. So today, be kind. That little random act of kindness, there's your challenge.
All right. Wow, fantastic. Chester, thank you again so much. It's been great having you. And, I hope that, we should do this again sometime.
Absolutely. If you're ever in New York, come visit. We'll go for a nice bagel or pizza or whatever you like in here. And I hope at some point I can see your wonderful castle in Bali. I've never been to Bali, but from what you've told me,
you are welcome.
It sounds amazing. I got to put it in my bucket list. Absolutely. Take care, Arthur. Thanks for the invitation.
All right, Chester. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching the Knights of Transformation. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, subscribe to Carmazzi TV on YouTube.